From suave, smooth talking to a revolving door of ever-changing friendships, today we look at how to spot a sociopath. Number 10. Lack of empathy or shame. One of the distinctive characteristics of a sociopath is the capability to perform unthinkable actions with little to no hesitation. Behavior such as publicly humiliating or even physically abusing others is typical of a sociopathic person. Whether through a lack of understanding or simply lacking the urge to attempt to understand, they seem unable to grasp the issue with manipulating, hurting, or lying to others. They often won't even take responsibility for their actions, choosing instead to blame others for having a problem with their actions in the first place. And their lack of compassion doesn't stop with people, as true sociopaths are known to be unapologetically cruel to animals as well. Number 9. Charm and manipulation. A smooth talker by trade, sociopaths are keen to butter up anyone they deem useful. Able to wax poetic and call attention to themselves at a moment's notice, these people transform into social puppeteers once they penetrate your defenses with their disarming allure. To expedite efforts, sociopaths will often make elaborate gestures of generosity in the hopes of attaining trust immediately. This, again, is all because you have something they want. A sociopath will do whatever they need to in order to reach their goals, and people, emotions, and any social consequences that arise are just other hurdles to clear on the way to the finish line. A sense of this can be felt in the sincerity, or lack thereof, behind a sociopath's words and actions, as they typically have a difficult time with everyday social interaction. The pleasantries they display on a daily basis are little more than the work of a con artist preying on the emotions of others. Number 8. High intelligence. Usually well-versed and well-rounded in their knowledge, sociopaths tend to be incredibly intelligent, given their tendency to manipulate and scheme, though it's unavoidable that they're naturally clever people. But many, if not all, sociopaths are beyond clever, as their highly competitive nature and need to be in control require the ability to outwit nearly anyone. It's impossible to lose the upper hand if you're always the smartest person in the room. This tactic does have its shortcomings, though, as no one is infallible, even if they refuse to admit it. In the rare case that a sociopath is proven wrong, the fangs come out, and their wealth of knowledge gets funneled toward a more vile strategy. Number 7. Compulsive lying. While extremely smart, the average sociopath is still playing the long con. This means that even the truth won't stand in the way of one and their goals. Sometimes they will craft a fantastical tale upon first meeting to strengthen their charming approach. Sometimes they will lie to dispute an otherwise well-known truth rather than admit they are wrong. And sometimes a sociopath will just lie for the sake of lying. The most damaging part about it is that they will lie so often that they even begin to believe their own lies. Not only that, but with their domineering, manipulative behavior, these lies will even spread to others the sociopath aims to control, polluting their minds under the guise of truth. They'll even engage in a tactic called gaslighting, a manipulative process that relies on convincing someone else to doubt their own intelligence and sanity rather than admit they're right. It doesn't get much more abhorrent than that. Number 6. Narcissism. Perhaps building off the delusions crafted through their dishonesty, sociopaths often have a very high opinion of themselves, going so far as to deny the existence of any shortcomings others may point out. Distracted by their own vanity, they usually retain a love for themselves and no one else. Going along with the rest of their con man toolbox, the sociopath is superb at mimicking the emotions of love, but this is simply another means to an end. Their extreme level of entitlement and self-importance can be seen through their narcissistic behavior. Those with an inflated ego tend to continue feeding that ego, limiting most everything they pursue to be self-serving first and foremost. One way to identify just how inflated their ego happens to be is to pay attention to the responses they give when you talk about your own problems. If they tend to take whatever you say and twist it to be about them, you may have a sociopath on your hands. Number 5. Evoked emotions. If you aren't totally sure a person you know is a sociopath just by analyzing them, then look elsewhere, like yourself. Sociopaths wreak havoc on anyone that enters their lives, and as a result, you may be affected if the person you suspect to be a sociopath actually is one. Take a step back and look at how you feel rather than how you think, because, like it or not, our brains aren't the most reliable in these situations. The brain wants to believe the person, and everyday people hire, date, work out with, and even elect sociopaths across the world, despite the signs being present that something is awry. Uncomfortable, extreme feelings can be much more honest than analyzing words, since a sociopath is actively attempting to subvert your attention from their true intentions. The 3 main emotions that should serve as a bit of a red flag here are fear, sympathy, and infatuation, as their need for control, dominance, and success are essential characteristics of a sociopath. It's no wonder how many tend to be predators as well. Fears should not be ignored, and if the person you suspect of being sociopathic evokes that emotion, it's best to do your research and steer clear until you know for sure. Infatuation is another dangerous, though perhaps not as obvious emotion to feel with someone who may be a sociopath. If you feel this way towards them, then their manipulative persuasiveness may be having its intended effects, in which case you're not so much falling in love as you are falling into their trap. Should you find yourself feeling extra sympathetic towards a person, there's also the chance they're a sociopath. Often avoiding fault, they will go to extreme measures to frame themselves as the victim. With all 3 of these emotional responses, it's simply best to remain skeptical of the person stimulating them. Number 4. Intensity and belligerence. Going along with the facade of their charm, sociopaths often convince others they lead exotic, tantalizing lives. They are apparently open to new things and exciting ventures, creating an illusion of fearlessness. In reality, the sociopath simply has no respect for rules and boundaries, as they apply their superiority complex toward all facets of life, and not just other people. These experiences can often be risky and dangerous, but also, given the sociopath's penchant for lying, wholly untrue. Whatever you do, though, no matter how wild the supposed feat, don't try to one-up them. The only thing more vigorous and fierce than their apparent interests is a sociopath's competitive spirit. It's one thing to be a sore loser, but it's another thing entirely to have the need to win. A sociopath will not just take a competition seriously, but go to extreme lengths to ensure they've done all they can to win, and if they still lose, then there's a good chance they'll let loose a level of anger that's otherwise normally concealed by their faux charm, often even refusing to admit defeat. Number 3. Word use. Besides the typical telltale signs, there are also phrases, keywords, and ways of speaking that can give away the sociopathic truth about someone's identity. Fast-talking fibbers, they will cover any slip-ups in their actions with a flurry of words. In an attempt to play on emotions and elicit specific responses, a sociopath will often rely on extremes and absolutes to make a story or explanation bigger than in reality. Phrases like "you deserve the best" or "you're the smartest person I've ever met" are often dealt out with no basis. These statements would ring hollow if said alone, but when combined with their amassed lies and precise charm, sociopaths use them to great effect. On the other side of the coin are the extremely negative phrases like "I will never trust you again" or "I will destroy you," that are meant to play on your fears. By the time your sociopath has left the charm behind, they've most likely already identified your emotional vulnerabilities and have plans to use them against you. The worst they can do, though, is employ both tactics. Sociopaths will use their extreme emotional responses to try and condition those they intend to manipulate, rewarding those who do what they want with charismatic joy and those who resist with intense anger and resentment. That can have damaging effects on a person, as the stress of attempting to appease the sociopath will often take away from their own self-esteem. Number 2, the 90% rule. If you were to miss all the other means of spotting a sociopath on this list, this would be both the most simple and the widest catching trick to learn. Simply look for behaviors that not only would you not engage in, but that you think 90% of people would also never do. A common occurrence among sociopaths is to blame others, typically those that they feel that they are justified in treating cruelly. This can include friends, family, and anyone who, for whatever reason, has decided to stay involved in the sociopath's life. When applying the 90% rule, it's pretty easy to recognize most people wouldn't treat friends and family with such disdain. Similarly, look at the times a suspected sociopath finds joy. Do you catch this person laughing or smirking at the misfortune of others? Ever see a suspect on trial smile during the victim's testimony in a court? It's the same thing. Sociopaths get their kicks off of the hardship of others, and that's something at which 90% of people wouldn't chuckle. Another angle to direct the 90% rule towards is the person's childhood history. Sociopaths often display signs of conduct disorder at a young age by engaging in behaviors and crimes like arson, being cruel to animals, stealing, and even just lying a lot. And luckily for society, as with the other examples, it's plain to see 90% of people don't participate in those activities. And number 1, no long-term friends. If all of these habits in a list don't sound bearable, let alone appealing, then they're 10 times worse when experienced often. As a result of these trademark behaviors, sociopaths keep a revolving door of friends rather than establishing any long-term relationships. A well-balanced person tends to have multiple circles of friends, either from work, school, or other organized activities. Of those circles, the average person will have some long-term friends, such as those made in high school or college. Sociopaths have few friends at any given time. Many will be recent, and they will even go so far as to lose contact with their own family. They may try and blame their apparent lack of socializing on a streak of betrayals, but if anything, this should be an indicator of the weirdly loyal obedience narcissistic sociopaths demand.